Maria Santos froze in the doorway, her mop bucket trembling in her hands. There it was, a massive steel safe built into the wall, wide open like a hungry mouth, stacks of gold bars gleaming under the office lights and bundles of cash piled so high they looked like green mountains. She had come to clean the executive floor at midnight, like always. The building was supposed to be empty, but the door to the corner office was cracked open, and yellow light spilled across the marble hallway. Maria's heart hammered against her ribs. She should run, she should pretend she never saw anything. But her feet wouldn't move. Inside the office, she could hear a deep voice talking on the phone. It was Richard Blackstone, the CEO himself, the man who owned everything, including the company that barely paid her enough to feed her daughter. "The offshore accounts are ready," Blackstone's voice drifted through the crack in the door. "Transfer it all tonight. By morning there won't be a trace left." Maria's hands started shaking. What was happening? Why was her boss hiding gold and cash in a secret safe? And why was he moving money in the middle of the night? She knew she should leave, but something made her lean closer to listen. And that's when she saw him in the reflection of the hallway mirror. Richard Blackstone was standing right behind her, watching her every move. "Well, well," his voice was cold as winter ice. "What do we have here?" Maria spun around, dropping her mop bucket with a loud crash, water splashing everywhere, soaking her worn sneakers. "Mr. Blackstone, I was just ... She stammered, but his eyes weren't angry. They were scared, terrified, even. "How much did you hear?" he whispered, glancing around the empty hallway like someone might be watching. "Nothing, sir, I swear. I was just cleaning, and listen to me very carefully." Blackstone grabbed her arm, his expensive watch shaking on his wrist. "My life is in danger. That money, that gold, it's not what you think." Before Maria could ask what he meant, the elevator dinged at the end of the hall and heavy footsteps echoed across the marble floor. "Quick!" Blackstone pulled her into his office. "They can't see you here." As they hid behind the massive desk, Maria realized the footsteps belonged to 3 men in dark suits. They weren't employees. They looked like the kind of people who made problems disappear. "Where is he?" one of them growled. Maria held her breath as Blackstone's hand shook while he pointed toward a hidden panel in the wall. A secret passage. They crawled through the narrow passage in complete darkness, Maria's heart beating so loudly she was sure the men would hear it. While behind them, chairs were being thrown and drawers ripped open. "Where are we going?" she whispered. "Boardroom." Blackstone panted. "It's the only safe place. Emergency meeting in 5 minutes." When they emerged, they were in the most intimidating room Maria had ever seen. 20 people in expensive suits sat around a table that looked like it cost more than her yearly salary. And these weren't normal executives. Maria saw guns hidden under their jackets. "Finally," said a woman with silver hair and cold eyes. "We thought they got you, Richard." Blackstone straightened his tie, trying to look calm. "Everyone, we have a serious problem. Our cover has been blown." Maria's mind raced. "Cover? What cover?" "Sir," she whispered urgently, "I don't understand what's happening." The silver-haired woman looked at Maria with sharp eyes. "Richard, please tell me you didn't bring a witness." "She's not a witness," Blackstone said quickly. "She's our new environmental services specialist." Maria's jaw dropped. Environmental services? She was a janitor. But before she could correct him, Blackstone leaned close and whispered, "Play along. Our lives depend on it." The silver-haired woman stood up. "Ms. Santos," Maria said quietly. "Maria Santos." "Miss Santos, I'm Agent Catherine Reynolds, FBI Environmental Crime Division. We've been investigating Blackstone Industries for 6 months." Maria felt the world spin. "FBI? Environmental crimes? The money and gold you saw," Agent Reynolds continued. "It's evidence. Richard has been helping us track down the biggest environmental criminals in the world." Blackstone Industries wasn't just a company, it was a front for an FBI operation targeting corporations poisoning the planet for profit. The men who were chasing us, Blackstone explained. They work for Viktor Petrov. He runs illegal chemical dumping operations across 12 countries. His chemicals have killed thousands. Maria thought about her daughter Isabella, who had asthma, and the brown river behind their apartment. Her hands clenched into fists. "Those chemicals," she said slowly, "they're in my neighborhood, Art." "They?" Agent Reynolds nodded grimly. "Your daughter's medical records show she lives in one of the most polluted areas in the city. Petrov's company has been dumping toxic waste there for 3 years. Suddenly, Maria felt something she'd never felt before, pure, burning rage. "They poisoned my baby," she said, voice shaking with anger. "They poisoned my Isabella." "That's why we need your help," Agent Reynolds said urgently. "Petrov is planning to dump 50,000 gallons of toxic chemicals into the water supply tomorrow night. We have to stop him." "But I'm just a janitor," Maria protested. "I don't know anything about catching criminals." Agent Reynolds smiled for the first time. "Maria, you know more about this building than anyone. You've been cleaning every floor, every office, every secret room for 6 months. You've seen things that other people miss." Blackstone pulled out a blueprint of the building. "Petrov's men are coming back tonight. They think I'm working for them, selling insider info about environmental inspections." "Why would they think that?" Maria asked. "Because," Blackstone said quietly, "I used to work for them. Before I became an FBI informant, I was one of the biggest environmental criminals in the world." The room wasn't just full of department heads. 3 major investors were sitting in the corner, deciding whether to pull funding from the company. One of them, a woman with kind eyes, spoke up. "Go on." Maria felt every eye in the room on her. Her heart thundered in her chest. But Isabella's face flashed in her mind, her beautiful daughter who deserved a better world. "You want to be carbon neutral? Start with your cafeteria. You throw away 500 pounds of food every day. I know because I'm the one who takes it to the dumpster." She walked to the whiteboard and picked up a marker with trembling hands. "Food waste creates methane gas. Methane is 25 times worse than carbon dioxide. But instead of throwing it away, you could compost it. Or better yet, donate it to food banks." As Maria wrote on the board, it became clear her diagrams were more insightful than anything their consultants had provided. "Where did you learn this?" Blackstone asked softly. Maria's eyes filled with tears. "My daughter. She's 8, and she knows more about the environment than most adults. You know why? Because she has to. Because kids like her will pay for the mistakes we make today." She turned back to the whiteboard, her handwriting shaky but her message powerful. "Your company has 50,000 employees. If each brought a reusable water bottle instead of buying plastic, you'd eliminate 18 million plastic bottles per year. That's not just good for the environment, it's good for business. You'd save $2.3 million annually." "She's right," the executive whispered to Blackstone. "These aren't just environmental solutions. They're money-saving solutions." Maria wiped her eyes and continued, her voice gathering strength. "You want to know what else I see? I see executives who drive to work alone in cars that use more gas than my family's monthly grocery budget. I see buildings lit up all night when no one's here. I see paper tossed after only one side is used." Her confidence grew with every word. "But I also see opportunity, a company that could lead instead of follow. A chance to prove that caring for the environment and making a profit aren't opposites, they're partners." Blackstone walked to the window, the room silent, waiting to see if he would explode or walk away. Instead he turned, eyes misted. "How long have you been with this company?" "6 months, sir." "But I'm not. 6 months, and you've done more than consultants we've paid millions." He shook his head. "What's your name?" "Maria Santos." "But I need to tell you, Just as she tried to confess, the door burst open. A man in a security uniform rushed in. "Mr. Blackstone, sorry to interrupt, but we have a problem. The head of environmental services didn't show up, and a janitor is missing from the crew. We think someone found her," Blackstone said, gesturing to Maria. The guard blinked. "Sir, the janitor you're looking for is right here. And she just gave us the most valuable presentation this company has ever heard." The room buzzed with whispers, some shocked, others sheepish, while the investors in the corner smiled. The kind-eyed investor stood. "Miss Santos?" Maria nodded, speechless. "I'm Catherine Reynolds from Green Future Investments. We came here to decide whether to pull our $500 million investment from Blackstone Industries." Maria's knees wobbled $500 million. "But after hearing your presentation," Catherine continued, "I'm prepared to double our investment on one condition." Everyone leaned in. "Miss Santos, would you head a new department? We want you to become Blackstone Industries' first chief environmental impact officer." The air went still. Maria's hands trembled. "Ma'am, I don't have an MBA. I don't have a college degree. I'm just a janitor." Blackstone stepped forward. "Can I tell you something? I started this company 30 years ago. My first job? Garbage collector. I spent 2 years picking up trash before I had enough to start this business. Sometimes the ones who understand waste best are the ones forced to live with it." At that moment, Maria's phone buzzed a text from her babysitter. "Isabella's asthma is acting up. Used inhaler twice. She keeps asking when mommy's coming home." Maria's eyes welled, not with fear, but hope. "If I took this job, could I really make changes? Ones that help kids like my daughter breathe cleaner air?" "Maria," Blackstone sighed, "you wouldn't just help your daughter. You'd help kids everywhere." Catherine pulled out a contract. "Starting salary, $200,000, full benefits, and $50 million to implement your programs." Maria stared at the figure's numbers she'd never dreamed of, not for wealth, but for power to make a difference. But just as she opened her mouth, a red-faced executive barked, "Wait, we're giving a janitor $200,000 and $50 million? That's insane," murmurs spread. Maria's chest tightened. "You're right, Howard," Blackstone said. Maria's heart dropped. "It is insane," Blackstone continued, "that we've wasted millions on bad advice when our janitor gave us the best solutions we've ever heard." Turns out, Howard had been hiding years of environmental failures. "Ms. Santos," Blackstone said firmly, "are you ready for the hardest job of your life?" Maria thought of Isabella, of kids gasping for air, of poison rivers and forgotten neighborhoods. "Mr. Blackstone," she said, her voice steady, "I've been working 3 jobs, raising a daughter and going to night school to study environmental science. I've been living the hardest life already." She walked to the board and wrote, "Hard work plus big dreams equals changing the world. So yes, sir, I'm ready." As she signed the contract, Catherine smiled. "One more thing, Green Future also funds scholarships. We'd like to offer Isabella a full ride from kindergarten to college." Maria dropped the pen. "What?" "You have every opportunity to continue your legacy." Overwhelmed, Maria collapsed into her chair. This wasn't just a win for her. It was a future for Isabella. But the biggest twist came 6 months later. Maria's programs had saved the company $15 million and raised their environmental rating from F to A+. The stock price doubled. At the Global Environmental Summit, Maria stepped on stage to a standing ovation. "I want to tell you about the day that changed everything," she said. "The day a janitor walked into the wrong room and found her destiny." In the front row, Isabella, now 9, scribbled every word in her notebook. After the speech, a young journalist approached. "Miss Santos, the day you walked into that boardroom, it wasn't an accident." Maria raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? The elevator was hacked. A group of young environmental activists tried to disrupt the meeting by rerouting everyone. They never expected to send in a janitor with the real answers. 1 year later, Maria sat in her office, an office with windows overlooking a city slowly healing from its past. A knock came at the door. "Come in," she called. A young woman walked in wearing a Blackstone Industries uniform, pushing a cleaning cart that rattled softly across the tile. "Miss Santos, I'm sorry to bother you," she said nervously. "I'm new here, and I got lost. I was supposed to be cleaning the cafeteria, but I ended up on the executive floor." Maria looked up from her desk, the corner of her mouth lifting into a warm smile. "What's your name?" "Rosa Martinez," the woman replied. "I'm working 3 jobs to support my son. He has asthma and the medical bills ... Maria's expression softened as she stood and walked around the desk, the words striking something deep in her chest. "Rosa, can I ask you something? Do you know anything about environmental science?" Rosa blinked, startled by the question. "Well, my son taught me a lot. Kids these days, they know so much about taking care of the planet. He's always showing me videos and articles." Without a word, Maria opened a drawer, pulled out a crisp business card, and placed it in Rosa's hand. It read, "Rosa Martinez, Assistant Chief Environmental Impact Officer." Rosa stared at the card, mouth open. "Rosa," Maria said gently, "I think you took the wrong elevator for exactly the right reason." As the young woman stood therein, stunned silence, Maria's thoughts drifted to her own first night in that same hallway, mop bucket in hand, heart pounding in fear, and voice trembling with uncertainty. She remembered the weight of the world on her shoulders and the moment. It all shifted when being in the wrong place at the wrong time turned out to be exactly right. One mistake had rewritten her future. Now she was rewriting someone else's. Sometimes the biggest opportunities arrive disguised as accidents. Sometimes the people with the most powerful ideas are the ones the world overlooks. And sometimes it's the wrong floor that leads to the right future. Maria turned back to her office window and gazed at the skyline beyond. The air was clearer. The streets below bustled with electric buses and green rooftops. Isabella would breathe easier tonight. And so would Rosa's son. And so would millions of children across the world because a tired janitor once pushed the wrong elevator button, listened instead of walking away, and dared to speak up. The end? No. This was only the beginning. Rosa Martinez sat stiffly in the corner of Maria Santos's sleek office, clutching the business card that read, Assistant Chief Environmental Impact Officer, her hands trembling as disbelief swept over her. She had simply taken the wrong elevator while trying to clean the cafeteria, but here she was, face to face with the CEO of the world's fastest rising environmental corporation, Right Earth, formerly Blackstone Industries, whose transformation began with a similar mistake by Maria herself. And as Maria looked at Rosa, she saw not just a cleaner lost on the executive floor, but a mother fighting for her asthmatic son, just as she once fought for Isabella, and she knew instinctively that this was the next right accident. Over the next few weeks, Rosa trained under Maria's mentorship, asking questions, taking notes, attending meetings, and sharing heartfelt insights inspired by her son's school science projects. And when she pitched the Breathe Better Now initiative to the city's school board, advocating for air purification in public schools and electric buses, her voice wavered at first, but gained strength as she saw heads nodding. And that very night, 5 cities requested the blueprint. Successes like these stacked up quickly as Maria and Rosa's programs took hold, converting toxic zones into biohubs, turning schools into clean energy models, and inspiring local youth to become green builders of the future. Yet with every win came exposure. And when Maria delivered a searing keynote in Geneva, titled Waste is Not the Enemy, Indifference Is, she became an icon overnight, her name trending globally as both a hero and a threat. especially to shadowy figures like Viktor Petrov, whose empire of illegal dumping and corruption had thrived for years without interference until now. And when Maria began receiving encrypted threats warning her to back off or risk her daughter's safety, she didn't cower. She upgraded security, moved Isabella to a safe location, and stood on a press stage the next morning to publicly denounce the intimidation campaign while revealing verifiable evidence, supported by the FBI, that linked Petrov to international environmental crimes, triggering a global hunt that ended with his arrest on a yacht in the South Pacific, while Maria and Isabella planted trees back in their hometown's reclaimed park. Through it all, Maria never lost her grounding, returning each night to a modest home, where drawings from children around the world lined the walls, messages of thanks and hope, and where Isabella, growing taller and stronger each day, helped draft new ideas for school outreach programs and sustainability education. And when Maria announced the company's rebranding to Bright Earth, she did so not with a flashy campaign, but with a citywide event where former janitors, cafeteria workers, delivery drivers, and local activists cut the ceremonial ribbon, symbolizing the power of overlooked people to lead global change. Rosa, now leading her own international task force, frequently wrote notes to Maria that said things like, "Still riding the wrong elevator, but now with purpose." And on the one-year anniversary of her promotion, Maria addressed the United Nations at the first Global Environmental Justice Summit, standing tall in front of youth leaders, skeptics, and world figures alike as she declared, "This world doesn't need perfect leaders, it needs real ones." The next person to save the planet might be pushing a mop, not a microphone. And as the audience gave her a standing ovation, Maria looked out and saw Isabella in the front row, notebook in hand, scribbling furiously, preparing her own speech, dreaming her own solutions, and planting her own seeds for the future. Because what had begun as one wrong turn on an elevator had become a movement, a revolution, and a reminder to the world that sometimes the most powerful forces for change are the people you least expect, and sometimes the wrong room is exactly where you're meant to be. Years later, long after the headlines had faded and the emergency boardrooms had become sunlit think tanks for green innovation, Maria Santos stood barefoot in a community garden that had once been a landfill, her hands deep in soil that no longer burned with chemicals but teemed with life, earthworms, roots, and the scent of clean possibility. The skyline in the distance shimmered not with smog but with solar panels and wind turbines, symbols of a city that had transformed itself from a cautionary tale into a global model of sustainability. And everywhere she looked, she saw the fingerprints of ordinary people who had chosen to do extraordinary things. Rosa Martinez, now running a global fellowship for women in environmental leadership. Isabella attending an international university on a scholarship she'd earned not with privilege, but with passion. And countless young activists who cited the Santos principle in their work, the idea that environmental justice must begin with those most affected, that the solutions to the world's most complex problems often live in the hearts of those society overlooks. The garden buzzed with volunteers, some planting native species, others installing sensors to monitor soil regeneration, and Maria, now a global advisor for environmental equity, no longer needed a title to feel powerful. Instead, she felt rooted, connected, humbled by the path that began not with ambition but with necessity, a mop, and the accidental push of an elevator button. She closed her eyes and listened, not to applause or corporate reports, but to the laughter of children playing nearby, breathing air cleaner than she'd ever dreamed possible for them. And in that sound was everything: redemption, legacy, hope, and a future rewritten not by those at the top, but by those who had once been invisible and dared to speak anyway. If this story inspired you, moved you, or made you believe in the power of unexpected voices, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs a reminder that change can come from anywhere, even the quietest corners. By subscribing, you'll get more empowering stories, Thought-provoking narratives and heart-driven content delivered straight to you. Let's keep building a world where every voice matters, every action counts, and every wrong turn might just lead to the right future.